My name is Patrick Reznik.
Sorry, Patrick.
No worries. And Carly and I are attorneys with Braun and Gresham. It's a local Dripping Springs, Hays County firm. We only represent landowners on all sorts of different issues. Carly and I in particular represent landowners in condemnation cases, whether it be a road, a transmission line, a water line, a oil line, or a gas line, or many other projects. And there's a lot happening in Hays County right now, as each of you know. Personally, I grew up in Texas. I'm moved to Dripping Springs in 1999 and have been here ever since. And I have seen the growth that's happened in the Dripping Springs area and the Hays County area. And, you know, part of me is excited, part of me is not so excited about it, because when we moved here, it was a sleepy little community. And now the growth is just incredible. We have all sorts of concerns related to water and wastewater and infrastructure for roads. If you've been in Dripping Springs at 290 and Ranch Road 12 and have been backed up all the way to the Tractor Supply or all the way back to the water tower going towards Austin, you know how much growth is happening and how much growth is happening between here and Austin and here and even Fredericksburg. A lot of happening. Land values are increasing at an incredible rate. And it's an interesting time. And Carly, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Carly Barton. Like Patrick said, I work with him on our condemnation team in Braun and Gresham. I'm from Southwest Austin. I grew up in Oak Hill. My first interactions with condemnation and road projects was the Y at Oak Hill that they're still doing construction on, and they took my Taco Bell and Sonic away when I was younger. I was very upset about that, and they still hadn't started construction until more recently. So that was my childhood experience with eminent domain. But I live in Kyle. My husband's family has lived in Hays County for a very long time. So we're very passionate about not just our clients, but the Hays County community. And we're which is always nice to represent neighbors. So we're gonna be told, like Avalon said, there's a lot of projects out there. We are going to be scratching the surface. I'm sorry if we don't get to your particular project, but we will try and get to as much as we can. So, all right.
Cover a lot this evening. About the first 45 minutes, we're going to cover some projects that's on the next slide and discuss what we know about those projects. Can you go to the next slide, Carly?
Are you on? Is it not on the what we're going to cover?
There you go. There it is. So what we're going to try to cover this evening is some of the projects that are happening now, some of the projects that are in the near future, and then discuss some of the projects that are in the long-term future. Carly mentioned Oak Hill. If you've gone to Austin recently and been on the 290-71 corridor through Oak Hill, you've seen how much clearing has happened and how much dirt is being moved. Believe it or not, that project first was initiated in 1985. In 1985, it was the first study that was approved, and that's how long it's been going on. The last 17 years, there's been lots of controversy and lots of studies, feasibility studies, about what's this going to look like and what the design is going to look like, and a lot of public input. What I hear from a lot of folks that call me, and I've been talking to our Hays County commissioners about these particular projects, and as well as folks at TxDOT, these are long-term projects for the most part. And Oak Hill is a really good example that it could take years. So what I want everybody to do is, you know, take a deep breath, know that a lot of this stuff is not going to be happening in the next 5 to 10 years. But as a landowner or a developer or investor, you want to know where these projects may be, whether it's now or whether it's 5 or 10 years from now, and what's happening in Hays County. We're going to look at the master plans, help you understand a little bit about what master plans are. If you don't, we're going to talk about some of the projects that are happening now, such as the roundabout at 150 and FM 3237 by the Hayes, is it Hayes City Store, or Hayes County Store? I can't remember.
Hayes City Store.
Hayes City Store, right there. And I think there's a Rooster package store right there. That is built. The opening is tomorrow. We're going to talk about some other projects in and around Hayes County. And we're going to end with what to expect if you actually are in the condemnation process, and try to give you just a brief overview on that in the last 10 or 15 minutes of that project. So let's start with the Hayes County Master Transportation Plan. Here is the website. Now, unfortunately, it is not updated on a regular basis, but you got to remember it's a long-term transportation plan. And when I say long-term, I mean long-term. Some of these projects are not going to happen until 20 years because there's just no money there, and it just takes a lot of time for a lot of various reasons that we'll talk about in order to get that. And so if you did it, here's the website. You can go to that. Here's what you're going to see. And for example, Carly, if you go to north of Dripping Springs along Fitzhugh and Ranch Road 12 up a little bit farther north, that road, if you've been on that road in that intersection, it's really, really busy. But it is in the long range transportation plan. I talked to the county officials. Who knows when that's going to happen? It's probably 20 years before that's going to be widened. Yet it's on this particular plan. And then Travis County, however, once you get on Fitzhugh into Travis County, they are actually doing work in the near future on expanding a bike lane. But the counties don't necessarily communicate with each other. And if you've been in Oak Hill throughout the years, you know that there's been lots of redesigns. So they spend lots of money on redesigns until they get to ultimately to the big design. And then Dripping Springs, for example, has its own long-term transportation plan, which is just within Dripping Springs. And that would be the next slide, I think, Carly.
Yeah, and I just kind of want to point out on here, well, first off, Patrick stated that the transportation plans don't happen very often, don't get updated very often. Prior to 2021, the previous master transportation plan for Hayes County was from 2016. So these are very long-term projects. They will identify the projects of short-term, mid-term, and long-term. But short-term is still, it's still 2021 to 2029, right? So those are the kinds of timeframes that we're looking at. And then I just wanted to point out on this map, you can see our FM roads, our highways, and then there's also some recommended connections. These are not roads that are, they are very, very, very long-term in the future, where there might be some roads in the future, and those are those dashed lines.
Thanks, Carly, for that. Go back to that slide. It's a good opportunity to talk about what TxDOT is doing. So if you look at 290 between Oak Hill and 281, TxDOT is now doing some studies on adding additional lanes from Oak Hill, now that project is under construction, all the way to the Sportsplex, which is close to the HEB in Dripping Springs. There are possibilities that in the long term, there may be an overpass that would go over Ranch Road 12 at 290, get to the other side. And there's also studies being done on expanding 290 all the way to 281 toward Johnson City. But again, those are very long term. Those are not going to happen anytime soon. So one of the things that Hayes County is trying to do is prevent an overpass through Dripping Springs on Ranch Road 12 and provide some bypasses or areas to get around that particular intersection that is so crowded. The Dripping Springs also has a long-term transportation plan. Here's the website for that. Again, it is not updated on a regular basis. It's got a lot of lines on the map. and a lot of things that are not going to be happening. But if you go to this map, you can see one of the projects that we're going to talk about is from 150 to Ranch Road 12 on how to get to 290 in that particular bypass. So these are very confusing because you'll have short-term, mid-term, long-term. What is that? How much time is that? And as a landowner and as an investor, you want to know, when is this going to happen? There is no easy answer to that, everybody. It is a difficult process. I've been working for 5.5 years with a client on a textile project south of College Station in Grahams County, and it's taken forever, and they don't even know if they're going to have to move. And now we know they are going to have to move, and they're in their 70s. So it's complicated, it's difficult, it's frustrating. You want answers, and it's really hard to get answers because it's complex with the timing, the studies that have to be done, the public input that has to be done, and the funding is the biggest issue. Where's the money? Not the biggest issue, but is a huge issue. Where's the money going to come from? So if you look at this website, this is what you're going to see. And it doesn't provide a lot of information, but a lot of the red that is the short term is a lot of the work that's been happening with the new developments that are coming in who want to go into the city, especially east and west of Ranch Road 12 to the north. Those new housing developments are coming in. The solid red lines are going to be enhancing the roads. And if you go north of Dripping Springs on Ranch Road 12, you'll see some of those new roads being built. And that's to provide new roads by developers that are going to be actually donated, and we'll talk more about this later, to the county, so that they'll be county maintained. But the developer is very involved in that process, and it's not part of a condemnation process. It's just part of a development process. All right, let's talk about something that is on the ground. FM 3237 and 150 intersection project. That is a picture of this. If you've been out there, they're going to have the ribbon cutting tomorrow. This is a roundabout that, through the feasibility studies and various committees that have been doing over the last 10 years, and engineering and design companies that the county has hired in order to figure out, how do we move traffic faster? Their determination, whether you like it or not, is roundabouts. So these roundabouts, there's about 8 to 12 that are being planned. This is the first one. So you'll be able to see what it looks like and what it feels like when you drive through there. You can see the Hayes City store right there across the roundabout. But this is what you're going to be seeing a whole lot more of. So if you're really interested in knowing what does one look like, how do you drive through one? I know European countries and other parts have lots of roundabouts. This is something new to Hayes County, and we're going to have to figure out if we like it or not, and figure out how to navigate through there. Fortunately, I think it's only one lane. Some roundabouts have an inside lane and an outside lane. If you get stuck on the inside lane, you may go roundabout, 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 and not know how to get out. But this is designed fairly well, but this is what's being built, and this is on the ground. So let's talk about the other roundabouts that could be happening. I mean, I think this one.
I think what's interesting, this was built with the 2016 Hayes County road bond.
Right.
So that's how long these projects take. You go from bond 5 years ago. So we'll talk about funding and kind of whether projects are funded or not is a big issue. But
the 2016 Hayes County bond was a big one. There's no bonds that are on the books right now. So we'll talk about, for example, the Darden Hill Road project. So this is a Darden Hill, Sawyer Ranch Road, which is just south of 290. And there's a lot of traffic there, a lot of new development that is happening there. The first thing that is going to be happening, and it's happening right now, and we represent the landowners around this roundabout at Darden Hill and Sawyer Ranch Road. So they're big roundabouts. That one is what we call in the acquisition mode. They are in condemnation. The county is using its eminent domain authority in order to condemn the properties to the each side of Sawyer Ranch Road to the north, because Cypress Springs Elementary School is to the south. And this is an effort to get another roundabout to feed the school. The land that's being taken is under condemnation process. We're right in the middle of that right now. We have appraisers that have hired, and the reality of it is land values are changing so much. The county's opinion of what the landowner should be paid and what I believe, or we believe the landowner should be paid, is vastly different. So we're in that negotiation process. So that's happening right now. The next phase that is going to happen, that there is some funding for the acquisition, is going from Sawyer Ranch Road to 1826. That's going to be the next expansion. The expansion from Sawyer Ranch Road all the way to 150 is long-term. There is no money for acquisition. The design is not final. So that's not going to be happening anytime soon. But anybody that is on Darden Hill from Sawyer Ranch Road to 1826 is in the process. And the next slide, we'll talk about also the 26 bond. I know there's a lot of information on here. I'm not going to walk through each of the bullets on this, but right now, there's been survey requests by Doucette engineers who are sending letters to landowners along Darden Hill between Sawyer Ranch Road and 1826 for that expansion. I mean, it is going to go from a 2-lane to a 4-lane. It will, most of the land is right now being planned to take on the south side or the left side as you're headed to 1826. That could change. These projects are what are called design build projects. So they can change and move as long as, you know, they haven't finished the final surveys and they haven't finished the final plats, and send that information to the landowners. So, but this is in the process. We're looking at late fall. One of the commissioners told me today that unfortunately Doucette engineers sent letters to a lot of people who are not going to be impacted. So what he has suggested is he's going to send out people from Doucette or from some of the other companies, maybe even from the county, to go talk with the landowners about what's going to be happening and when it's going to be happening. And then eventually they will have some sort of community meeting for additional public input. But there's no construction funding. So there's going to have to be another bond election, or the TxDOT through federal dollars is going to have to provide money for this. The money part of these projects is very, very, very complicated. And that's in part what takes a long time for these projects to go forward. But we do know that Darden Hill is going to be widened. Travis County on that side is growing rapidly. There's lots of developments that are happening with more housing, in this particular area. If you know where the HEB is going at Nutty Brown Cafe, they've cleared all that area right now. So there's a brand new HEB that's going in there. So Nutty Brown Road is going to have a lot more traffic, and Nutty Brown Road ends up going to 1826. So while it might be convenient for people to have another HEB, all it does is increase traffic. So we've got to deal with that. The next is Sawyer Ranch Road at 12. Let's see, we've already covered this. So this is long-term. There's no funding for acquisition, but this is the general map in order to get from Darden Hill, Sawyer Ranch Road, in order to get to Ranch Road 12. So they're going to create a bypass from the existing 150 in order to get to Ranch Road 12. Now there's another roundabout that's going to be a Ranch Road 12 and 150. And I think that's on the next slide. And they're currently in the condemnation process. So this roundabout this is a design. So if some of you may not be familiar with these type of schematics, but if you imagine that you're on Ranch Road 12 coming from Dripping Springs or from Wimberley going the other direction, or from 150, Twisted X Ranch is right there in that area. You can see the label right there. Howard Ranch is to the south there. So they're going to put a roundabout in that area where you see this, which is just south of the cemetery and south of Calaterra. And they're in the process, when I say they, the county is in the process of condemning that landowner in order to build that roundabout. My understanding is that was a tag for a convenience store, but now the roundabout is going to prevent that. So that's actually in litigation right now. But that's the second roundabout that's most likely to be built of all these roundabouts that we're talking about. The timeline on this one is the next year, quite frankly, since they're in litigation right now on condemnation. If the county gets the rights to go ahead and start constructing, then that's going to happen very soon. The one at Sawyer Ranch Road and Darden Hill, they've already cleared all the trees if you go through there. So they're in the middle of the construction process. They hope to have that up and running probably by the fall of next year's school session. It just takes a long time for these construction projects to be built. By the time you get contractors, and the materials are hard to get right now, it extended the time frame. But again, this roundabout was probably a year behind the one at Darden Hill and Ranch Road 12, but it is going to be the next roundabout that will be built.
Okay, so we've been focusing kind of on the Dripping Springs side and 150 over there. But now we're going to move to the 150 Realignment Project in Kyle. I say here in Kyle because that's where I am right now. But as most of you know, if you try to drive through downtown Kyle on Center Street during any kind of traffic hour, it backs up quite a bit, not only just because of the railroad, but also, it's downtown, there's stoplights, people are getting off of I-35. So as a part of, to relieve that congestion, to make sure the traffic is flowing better, they are proposing an alignment around downtown Kyle to the south. So it would be a 4-lane divided roadway. Typically for 4 lanes, you're looking at about 150 feet of right-of-way needed. And that includes a lot of these projects you'll see on, especially on our FM roads in Hays County, when they're moving from 2-lane to 4-lane, they also want to design accommodations for pedestrians and bicycles as well. So that's giving you kind of deeper shoulders, bike lanes, and those kinds of design elements. So this is an interesting project. They have a route. They have identified some of those impacted landowners. It's coming off right kind of near Yarrington, if you're familiar with the area. So they have a preliminary design. They've done their environmental due diligence, but as we were talking about, it's not currently funded. So that means, typically that means they don't have money for purchasing the right of way, and they don't have money for the construction. And so this project, even though it is greatly needed and something that the county would like to be working on, it isn't currently funded. So it's kind of just hanging out there. So until we get that funding going, then it will this will be a project that the county can pick up relatively quickly, because they do have like I said, a preliminary design and the environmental is already done on it. Your funding structures, it is quite complicated. There are projects that are identified by, you kind of have it's a hierarchy, right? So on the low level, you have your cities. And as we talked about, we had, Dripping Springs Master Transportation Plan. Kyle has one. All of the cities have them, right? San Marcos. And then those align with your countywide transportation plans. And then those countywide transportation plans will then go into for our area, it's CAMPO, so the Capital Area Metro Planning Organization. So they will have a master plan for the surrounding counties around Travis County and you know, the capital area. And so that they're identifying projects to keep traffic moving. And then you have your TxDOT, projects. And then TxDOT gets a lot of its money from, right, the Federal Highway Administration and big grants and bonds. And it all kind of trickles down. That money can trickle down through the projects. And then of course we have our road bonds as well. So that's kind of the funding structure, but that's why timing can be very uncertain, because you just don't know exactly where, you know, how close are they to getting money to handle the project. So.
This is a project that is causing a lot of folks concern. And I talked with our county commissioner in precinct 4 today about this particular project to get some idea on timing, because, you know, if you go back to the previous slide, Carly, there's the Improve 150 website, which is very, very helpful, but it's sometimes hard to navigate to find kind of the information that you're looking for. But that's definitely a good website to go to. But we're continuing to update our website with more information, with more current information. So this project, if you go to the next slide, Carly, is probably 5 to 10 years away. But this is the general alignment that they have settled on. Commissioner Walt Smith has been very involved in this process. And all the landowners along this particular proposed route have been contacted and talked to. So this goes to from again 150 Ranch Road 12, the roundabout that we were just talking about, and then going through along property lines to the west, and then up to Martin Road, which is at 290 going to the north. There were many discussions about, and we'll show you the next slide, about possibly a road to go to 165 and Onion Creek. And if you look at this, and if you start at 150 and Ranch Road 12, these were some of the proposed alternative routes. And what right now is being proposed is at Ranch Road 12, Carly, if you can take your cursor, Ranch Road 12, and where the roundabout is, further south, right there. Okay, so that's a development that is happening right now on that property to the south. Calaterra is to the north. Now we'll talk a little bit more about developments and how those work, but Calaterra has plans to develop more housing to the west of the existing Calaterra. Right now, the proposal for the road is going to the south of the cemetery, connect to that roundabout, go along that property line to the north straight, and then connect to the intersection where it would go then north on Martin Road. I don't know if you can trace that, Carly, with your cursor, but it would be there going straight to the west, and then making that turn there. There would be a few properties that would be bisected there, and then going along the property lines to the west until you get to right there, which is Martin, which goes north and then connects to Martin Road to get to 290. The idea is to find a way to take a lot of the traffic that has to go through Dripping Springs at Ranch Road 12 and 290 in order to get it to 290 going west. There's also plans, this is what we were talking about with the Darden Hill expansion, in order to try to do the same thing to get traffic to the east in order to bypass that intersection to get going east to the Austin area. This is probably, there's no funding. If you go to the previous slide, there is no funding on this particular project. They're still planning on doing what's called a feasibility study. It's going to be probably more community input. The county is the one that decides that. but it will eventually be a 4-lane highway that will go through there. But what I'm told is it's another 5 to 10 years down the road, so to speak. And so it's not something that's going to be happening immediately. But what we're trying to do, everybody, is just to give you more information that is available, more certainty, because if you're a buyer, a seller, an existing landowner, you want to know what does the future hold for you. And again, the hard part is the timing. We just don't have any certainty on the timing, in part because of the funding, in part because of all the research that has to be done, and all these studies that have to be done. And again, going back to the Oak Hill, it's been 17 years. If you go back to 1985, 37 years or so in the works. So this is not something that's going to happen anytime soon. But still, you want to know if you live there, or you plan to live there, or you want to invest in there, or you want to sell. You just got to decide, unfortunately, what your tolerance level is with all these uncertainties that are happening. But of all the routes that we were just showing, this is right now the recommended route that there's going to be an additional feasibility study on. But it is trying to minimize the amount of bisections of properties and follow property lines as much as they can. But like me, we moved to an area where there was no traffic, and now we have lots of traffic. And you have a piece of property down here where you want to get away from the traffic and all the infrastructure, and now you're going to have a road there, and now you're going to have traffic. So it's just part of I don't know whether you call it progress or you call it just change, but things are changing because of all the population growth and all the new housing developments that are happening.
So another, if you kind of remember back to the big map of Hays County, right? We only have 2 highways in Hays County. We got 290, we got I-35. So a lot of the roads that we're talking about are FM roads that are going to be built out and expanded from those 2 lanes to the 4 lanes. And I think that we had a question. A 4-lane road is about 150 feet of right of way. Like I said, it's an estimate, but that's the width that they will be taking. But part of one of the other projects that is ongoing, it started but is also ongoing, is the expansion of FM 2001 in Buda. So in the area, you'll know that they improved the crossing over I-35 at the bridge for the FM 2001. But what is in the works for this entire road is that it is going to it's going to connect up with State Highway 21 in Eastern Hays County. It already does hook up with it, but they're going to make it wider. They're going to take out, they're going to flatten it, make it less curvy because there's quite a bit of curves in it. So they're going to try and straighten it out so that it is really a safer road as well, because it is so, it can be quite treacherous if you're going too fast on there. So they have already started construction of expanding this section of FM 2001, by Baylor, Scott and White as you go south of the Sunfield development. But be expected to, like I said, it's a piecemeal project, but it's going to be expanded and extended and straightened all the way to State Highway 21. And that piecemeal process is also about funding, right? So we've got this, construction started in June of 2021. Haven't been over there in a while, so I don't know how that is progressing, but expect more as it grows that direction, and as Hays County grows that direction as well. Just as an aside, State Highway 21, that is going to be expanded as well. And we're talking about, all the way from San Marcos all the way up to Bastrop. That is a project that is on the radar screen of of not just Hayes County, but the surrounding counties and Campo as well. So another project that we're monitoring is down in San Marcos. There is quite a bit of congestion around Center Point Road from I-35 to Hunter Road. You've got a lot of development going on in the area and subdivisions there. And then, of course, what we run into in San Marcos is, and we run into it in Kyle and Buda too, is you got to cross that railroad. So that can be a very difficult and expensive design issue that they've got to overcome. So for Center Point Road, there are plans to create the 4-lane divided roadway. This one's going to take a little bit more of right of way. It's going to take 180 feet. And that's particularly because they are planning on building an elevated 4-lane bridge over the railroad. If you go out Ranch Road 12, when you pass the Hayes County Government Center from I-35, it'd be something similar to that, because there are such congestion problems when there's a train going by, or if there's a train just stopped in the middle of the crossing. So, but I'll say that this is not on. It's in partnership with the city of San Marcos, so they also are very much invested in this project. But at this point, it's still what they call a midterm project. So you're not looking at anything anytime soon, and it's more about 2030 to 2039. Now, these timelines are estimates. They can change if it gets a lot worse. It might be, they might reassess in the next 5 years and say, no, we need this now. It's becoming a short-term project. And we have to deal with this. But at this point, that is, that's what they are, the time frame that they're considering. So.
There's also in the Dripping Springs, Driftwood areas, issues related to water and wastewater. Many of you may know that in Dripping Springs, there's a moratorium that's still in place on additional construction. And that's because of the lack of the ability to put wastewater. Wastewater is a big issue. We have a lot of septic systems around the county. The county's trying to get away from some of the septic systems. But for example, the Dripping Springs treatment plant, which is essentially off of 150 and Ranch Road 12, is at capacity. So they don't have any more ability to put more wastewater into that facility until they have additional places to put it. Driftwood area, if you know where the Salt Lick is, there's a new golf course, Discovery Driftwood Golf Course that's going to go in there by the Salt Lick. They're working with the city of Dripping Springs in order to get wastewater to that golf course in order to distribute that wastewater, because the Dripping Springs wastewater treatment plant, its fields where it sprays the wastewater is at capacity. Dripping Springs was trying to get a permit for dumping wastewater into Onion Creek. That is in litigation and will probably be in litigation for another year with a uncertain outcome to be determined. So right now there's a wastewater treatment plant, wastewater lines that Driftwood Conservation is trying to build along 150 in order to get to the fields there at the new golf course in order to connect to the treatment plant and get it to that golf course for distribution of that wastewater. So if you have property along 150, then you're likely to be impacted by that particular project. That is in the middle of condemnation. They've just got their final offer letters, which if we have time, Carly will talk about the condemnation process. The final offer letters are coming as far as what's left in the compensation. There's also water lines that are related to the development that we're going to talk about, as well as wastewater. So what's happening is that the wastewater issues, whether it's the city of Dripping Springs or Driftwood, they're asking for additional water lines within the easement as well, so that they have both capacity to build both infrastructures, even though there's no plans to build the water lines right now. They're asking for both. I don't know if they're going to condemn for both, but they're asking for both. One of the developments that's happening right now that has got a lot of attention, and at least in the Dripping Springs area, is Village Grove development. And this is a good example of how this process works. So the developers are working directly with the engineers in order to build this development and get roads from 290. So this is just east of Dripping Springs, and a high development growth toward Retro 12 there to your left. So this development is in the active process of being designed. And the two roads that you see here, the engineers for the development company are contacted those landowners in order to build roads from 290 to that development. And then if the landowners agree to that, it doesn't go through the condemnation process because the developer doesn't have the right to condemn. The county is not doing this acquisition, so there's no county condemnation. Dripping Springs is not doing the acquisition, so they're not condemning. But if the landowners agree for these new roads, then these new roads will be dedicated to the county for county maintenance to get to this new Village Grove development. There's landowners to the south of that who are concerned where exactly one of the new Dripping Springs wastewater lines is going, about, well, are these roads going to be extended to the development to the south? The reality of it is this developer decides to extend and develop the property to the south, and the answer is yes. If the development could come to you, more traffic could come to you. It's a perfectly legal process that developers happening as they increase the infrastructure and housing in the area. But the county and the Dripping Springs are not directly involved in this process. So there is no condemnation that's happening in this, but it does affect your ability and your investment of your property, what's happening with your property, what's the highest and best use of your property. So this is a slide that just shows something that is actively being happening right now, and kind of south and to the east of the Dripping Springs HEB, Home Depot, to the east of the Sportsplex off of Ranch Road 12. And this is just one example of many of the developments that are happening.
All right. So now that we've kind of gone over a few of the projects here in Hays County, we're going to talk about the rights to who gets a right to eminent domain. What is the condemnation process like for a landowner if one of these roads is getting expanded and your property is right there, or you're going to get a water line or a wastewater line coming through your property, and what are the laws behind it? What's the process? And kind of what can you expect when you have an attorney representing you? So,
if you don't mind, Avalon, before we move to this section, is there any questions that have been asked that we could answer quickly?
There are 14 questions. I've tried to answer some of them.
Good.
So I think I can answer most of them at the end. It shouldn't take too long.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So who has the right to eminent domain? How is it derived? How do we get there? So the first is under the US Constitution, Fifth Amendment. It requires that the government must compensate citizens when it takes private property for public use. So there are really two aspects to a condemnation case or the rights under eminent domain. It is compensation, so fair compensation, and then that whatever they're taking is for a public use. It cannot be for a private entity or private person. Then we have the Texas Constitution as well that says no person's property shall be taken, damaged, or destroyed for or applied to public use without adequate compensation being made. again, we get those two aspects of you have a public use and you have to have adequate compensation. And then if we get down into the condemnation process and what's the statute that governs that process here in Texas, that is Chapter 21 of the Texas Property Code. And so in Chapter 21, it's the statute that'll say what are the steps that a public entity or a private entity has to go through when they're going to condemn your land and when they're going to take something. So those are the three texts that we derive our right to eminent domain, or the right to eminent domain is derived from. So what does that process look like? Eminent domain is the power, condemnation is the process. So those are why those two terms are used pretty interchangeably. But what happens? What's going to happen when the county finally decides that they're ready to move forward with these projects and they get funded? Well, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to get a letter from a engineering company, a right-of-way acquisition company, or the county. You might get a visit or even a call, and they're saying, hey, we want to come on your property. We'd like to survey it. And, we're going to be building a road or expanding a road through here. So that's phase one. Depending on the entity, you'll get a very big variety and range of aggressiveness in your landman or your first contact. Some of them are very persistent and will call and call and call. Others, you just kind of get a letter. But the next part of it is you will get an initial offer from the condemning authority. That initial offer will have the easement, or if they're taking the land, if they're taking all the land, like fee simple, they just want to buy it all or take it all, not really buying, but take it all. Then you will get you'll get an initial offer letter from them, and it'll explain, what they're taking and the compensation, that they think you should get. After that, there'll be a final offer letter as well, and it'll be what's called a bona fide offer. In that case, it's going to have it'll have the amount of money they want to pay you and compensate you for. It'll have an appraisal attached to it. It has the landowner bill of rights. It'll have either the easement or the deed to convey the rights to them to the entity. It'll be a pretty thick stack of papers that you will receive. And then from there, you can decide whether you want to take it or not take it, negotiate with them, go back and forth. But after that final offer letter, what will happen is if you do not accept the final offer, you will find yourself, there'll be a lawsuit filed, which in this case, in Hays County, those are typically filed in your county court at law. And so what will happen from there, you will get served with a lawsuit, but don't get too scared. They'll serve you with a lawsuit, but then from there, the judges appoint special commissioners. And special commissioners, they're not your county commissioners, they're different. A special commissioner is a resident landowner in Hays County. The ones here in Hays County you have a lot of attorneys, real estate professionals, community leaders. There are people who've been around for a while. You've got a former judge, that's one of them, or two of them actually. So they are people who are pretty familiar with the process and with the area. And they sit as special commissioners in it'll be a panel of 3 of them. And you'll get to go to present your information, present your case against them. And then the condemning authority will present their case and say, we think that this easement is worth X amount of dollars. You'll say, no, I think this easement is worth X amount of dollars. It's a little hearing. So the condemning authority, they'll bring their appraiser You can bring your own appraiser. The landowner can testify. And so that will be the special commissioners hearing. And then the special commissioners decide what they believe is adequate compensation or just compensation. So then from there, each side, the special commissioners will sign off. They'll say what they think it is. And then from there, either side gets to object to that award, that special commissioner's award. And then both sides can say, yeah, that's it, we agree, but either side can object. They can say, object, it's too low, or object, it's too high. And that objection kicks the case back to our county court at law, sometimes our district courts, to proceed like a normal lawsuit. And so you would have discovery, you would be able to have depositions, and if you go all the way, you'd have a jury trial on what is that adequate compensation for what's being taken from you in the eminent domain process. I will say there's also you can also challenge an entity's right to take, so challenge their authority to exercise eminent domain. That's a little specialized. When you're talking about a county and a utility, for the most part, they typically do have that eminent domain authority. TxDOT, that's pretty well established, but there's sometimes some issues that can come into play where you would do a right to take challenge. But typically you are fighting about terms of the easement or the conveyance, and then you're also fighting about compensation. So, what should you consider if you're impacted by some of these new routes or expanding roads? So, I mean, pretty basic, but very, impactful to landowners is that you'll face a changed property use and decreased property values. Right? You're going to have your gate might get taken out, your driveway might get taken out, you might have a structure in the way. You're going to have less use of that property. And so you're definitely, you're losing property values, and you're losing that use. But I will say that if you can get started with a team of professionals, not just attorneys, appraisers, sometimes land planners, if you have some experienced professionals on your side, engineers, you can combat against the narrative that the condemning authority is saying that, well, it goes this way, or this is worth this much. You don't have to accept exactly what they've said as true. So the next slide is kind of how do
we got 5 more minutes, so
okay.
Yeah.
Just when we talk about just compensation, I'm going to keep it really quick. You're getting compensated not just for the easement or the road that they are taking. You're not just getting compensated for that. You can get compensated for the remainder of your property, right? So it's not just, oh, what's the price per acre for this road frontage that they've taken from you? It can also be, what is the damage to the remainder of the property? How much does that new road or power line in front of your beautiful custom home and affecting your view, how much is that affecting your property, the rest of your property value? So that's the remainder damages that you can also be compensated for. That a lot of times your condemning authorities do not like to include that in their damages model and in the offers that they send. So
go back to that previous slide real quick. So the red is if there's a road or an easement that's taken, that's what we call the take. And we'll talk more about this in future webinars. And then the remainder is what you still own and what you have left. But the Supreme Court of Texas has basically said total compensation is what's the value of the property before the taking and what's the value of the property after the taking. And so it gets pretty complicated, and the process is pretty intimidating. The next slide is just a real life example of a road project in which the market value of the land, the improvements, you add all that together, you get $4.7 million. And then the improvements are completely wiped out and have no value. And then you end up with a compensation damage loss in the value of what is 3.6 is what our appraiser had. The next slide just shows you how vast the numbers can be depending on the methodology. Appraisal methodology is not a science, it is an art form. TxDOT's appraisal in this particular case was 2.4. Our appraisers were 3.6. So we were at a difference or a delta of $1.2 million. And we did go to a special commissioner's hearing on this case where 3 landowners that are resident landowners who are unbiased gave an opinion, and they agreed with us. So you can see that the differences in what they're being offered and what you can get can be very, very different. And that's where professional appraisers and experts like us can come in and help if you're faced with this situation, because it can be a very intimidating process. And go ahead, Carly.
So, and that kind of goes into, why work with an attorney? Why work with Patrick or I? Well, it is a pretty complicated process. And we can navigate that for you. You don't have to worry about, well, what is a bona fide offer? There's this 14-day deadline. What about this 30-day deadline? What is a special commissioner? You have someone to help navigate that for you. In general, people with attorneys consistently earn higher compensation and better easement terms than cases that are negotiated alone. So honestly, it's just, we know their tricks. And we've seen them play out a few, many times. So we're just a little bit, it's a little bit easier for us to catch on. And then additionally, on a condemnation case, most of the time we are able to defer legal fees until we've settled the case for you. And we'll do it on a contingency basis, so that if you're getting more money, that's what that's where we are getting compensated out of. So you don't have to come up. Not only are you, you don't have to come up with money to pay a lawyer up front if we can come out with better terms for you. So that's kind of our pitch of why it's, you should use an attorney. Like I said, some of those right-of-way agents are quite aggressive. So honestly, I think for a lot of clients, it's just, I don't want to have to put up with that person calling me all the time. So I know we've got quite a bit of questions. I'm going to try and answer them all. One of them was about, oh, you can see my little boy in the background. One of them was, there was a question about the overpass for Ranch Road 12. Hold on a sec. He wanted to watch more Wild Kratts. The question was about the overpass for Ranch Road 12. Sorry, not the overpass for Ranch Road 12, the overpass for 290, and not why does Dripping Spring not want this? I think the general consensus is, if there's an overpass that's taking away traffic that goes to stores and businesses, and makes it more of a developed area, and they don't want the downtown to kind of shrivel up more. Let's see, what else? Let's see. Yes, we can. We definitely talk. There's a, can you forward these comments to the appropriate officials? We do talk with county commissioners in the area. We can definitely communicate some of these suggestions that have been made. what recourse do you have if a surveyor or landman comes on your property without your permission? Can you deny them permission? This is a question we get a lot of times. You cannot deny them permission as long as they have eminent domain authority. But what we typically do is, first off, we'll be the person that can deal with them and negotiate with them, but also we can enter into a right of entry agreement with them to make sure that you're getting notified, that if there's any damages to your property, or if they do anything to it while they're surveying or doing tests or anything like that, that you that they'll be held responsible for that. The typical right of way for a 2-lane road, that I think it's typically like 100 feet, but it depends. I think the rest of these, we don't have enough information yet. There's not much going on. Any plans for 1826 or 967? 967, there is a plan to expand it to 4 lanes from downtown Buda to out to 1626. But that is on the very long term. Planning at this point. But I know there's been a lot of there's the Braun, the Bailey Braun Ranch, the Bailey Ranch, and the Armbruster development going on over there. That would be concerns, right? That's going to dump a lot of traffic, so that might make it go faster. I'm sorry, but I think the rest of these I might have to answer. We might have to just answer via email because they're a little more complicated than what we've got time for.
So Avalon, do you have all the chat questions that we can follow up with people? And again, if you want to schedule a free consultation with Carly or me on any of this information, we're happy to do so. Again, we're trying to provide information to the community about what's happening, because we know how frustrating it is that you go to some of these websites and you can't get current information. So please reach out to us. We'll visit with you, help educate you about the process and what's going on. And then again, we're going to do this October 19th at 6 p.m. We'll take your questions and get more information for you. So we'll have even more information, and we'll have additional projects that we can talk about on October 19th at 6 p.m. So we want to thank you so much. Sorry, we're running 5 minutes late. We packed a lot in a very short period of time. If you want more information and you want to sign up for our landowner alert system, we send this out twice a month. It's a very simple email. We get lots of good impacts by this. You'll have a couple of links in there that if you want to look at, great. If you don't, you can delete. But we have gotten very good feedback on this landowner alert system about what's happening in Texas and in the county. And there's lots of things we haven't talked about that are happening around that, depending on where you live and where your investment properties are, you may be interested in. So we encourage you to go ahead and subscribe to that. Avalon, we want to wrap it up?
Yep. Thank you everyone for your time this evening. Thank you, Carly and Patrick. I do have a recording of this presentation. I'm happy to send you a copy of that if you want to rewatch or review anything that we covered this evening. And I've got all of y'all's contact information, so I'll be sure to invite you to the next one if you're interested. Otherwise, I hope you all have a good evening, and do feel free to reach out if you have any follow-up questions. I have the report of all of the ones that we weren't able to reach tonight, and we'll make sure to follow up with you as well. All righty.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your attendance, and thank you, Carly. Thank you, Avalon. Y'all have a good evening. Bye-bye.